It is Saturday. It is early morning. I am ever vigilant. Let's do the news. You're probably going to see me a lot more these days. I've had very much energy for whatever particular reason. And the events, there's a lot of news afoot, especially with the new administration. And as such, there are things that you applaud. There are things you weep from. I didn't vote for Joe Biden. So anything that Joe Biden gets that's positive is, gravy for me. By the same token, everything that he does negative kind of makes the point that I was trying to make in not voting for one Joe Biden. That said, there have been some surprising positives, but by the same token, there have been dramatic negatives. And I've made this argument before that I think Joe Biden is failing in what he says he wants to do in regards to bringing this country together. Interestingly enough, though, stepping away from Joe Biden for the moment are consequences beyond the consequences that Joe Biden makes and what it means for the various factions that are in the political space. I said that there was a civil war afoot in the Democratic Party every bit as much as in the Republican Party. And that means, by definition, factions, people who aggregate towards certain sides. And then if I'm advocating for any particular side, clearly I find myself in disposition on the left, even though I don't function in the aspect of the political parties, more so the left in a disposition of an advocacy of policy in regards to what I want. I jump on or jump off in very situational dependent ways because I don't necessarily believe that functioning in the aspect of a party is positive. That said, there are representatives for what is considered nominally the left that are in the political space. And if they're going to be representatives, even nominally, there's certain things that should be positives and there's certain things that should be negatives. There's certain things that they shouldn't do at all, let alone being caught on CNN doing them. Joe Manchin. As you know, Neera Tanden was chosen by Joe Biden for the OMB, Office of Management and Budget. This is a powerful position. And the left was aggrieved by this, mainly because she is the worst aspects of politics. She is the epitome of everything wrong with politics. And for him to put her in that position gets across something dramatic and dramatically bad. The left hated this because a lot of her fire, a lot of her vitriol, her battle was leveled at the left. So, with a certain degree of laughter and a collective approval, CNN come up with this. Manchin says he'll vote against Biden OMB nominee Neera Tanden. Oh, earth. The left approves. This is right here. Democratic Senator Joe Manchin announced Friday he'll vote against Neera Tanden, President Joe Biden's nominee for the Director of Office of Management and Budget, making her confirmation unlikely given the Republican resistance to her nomination. Biden said, quote, "No, we asked if he planned to pull Neera Tanden's nomination because of Manchin announcement, adding, I think we're going to find the votes to get her confirmed." Now, Biden might be right in getting those votes to find her confirmed. But the left clearly proves. In a brief statement, the moderate West Virginia Democrat said that Tanden's comments on Twitter about Republican colleagues, including Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and Senator Bernie Sanders, an independent, had led him to doubt that she was the right fit. Collectively, the left laughs and all at once says, this is good. And yet, not all of what is considered nominally the left is laughing. And the representatives of that left, or at the very least what's nominally considered the representatives of that left in the political space, doesn't approve of Joe Manchin and is not laughing with the rest of the left in this development. I want to talk about this. I don't know what the hell is going on at Justice Democrats, but the idea that they weren't collectively laughing with the left that Joe Manchin was going to put a knife in that nomination, and that they weren't collectively happy that she was going to fail in that nomination is problematic and needs to be discussed. Welcome to the soapbox. name is Jamarl Thomas. This is a Saturday Soapbox. If you guys dig this content, you can always support this content through PayPal, Patreon. The show is also on Rock for Now, so you can see episodes of the show over there. Look, the show is brought to you by you, and I appreciate you the opportunity for allowing me to do that. You can get support in any way you see fit, including super chats. At this point, it should be turned back on. The heretical interview that I'm talking about is immortalized on CNN with people representing Justice Democrats saying this.
We have some breaking news for you now. Democratic Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia just announced that he will vote against President Biden's pick to lead the Office of Management and Budget, Neera Tanden, putting her nomination in jeopardy. Manchin saying in a statement, in part, quote, "I have carefully reviewed Neera Tanden's public statements and tweets that were personally directed towards my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, from Senator Bernie Sanders to Senator Mitch McConnell and others. I believe her overtly partisan statements will have a toxic and detrimental impact on the important working relationship between members of Congress and the next director of the Office of Management and Budget." Let's bring in our panel. Alexandra Rojas, this would be Biden's first defeat, and obviously a defeat for Neera Tanden personally because of a bunch of tweets she's done that were rather harsh.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, there's public record of those tweets, but the reality is I think that Joe Manchin is the one being divisive right now. We are in the middle of a public pandemic. Joe Biden was just elected by a huge mandate by the American people. We have to deliver as Democrats, and we need people in positions of power who are ready and prepared to go big in this moment and not leave anyone behind. The mentality has got to be of the Democratic Party especially, but any elected official, that we have to move quickly to save as many lives as possible. And I would also point out that he had no problem voting to confirm other appointments of clearly partisan members when it was the previous Republican administration. There should be no, I think, opposition to some, you know, folks that are being proposed by the Biden administration who have, you know, clearly are ready to do the work and are ready to get the job done.
Justice Democrats. For one, just to point out something, not everything. The pandemic can't be used to excuse everything. You can't use the pandemic just because you invoke it as your reasoning and rationale for something else. It doesn't always apply. This is kind of the politics of this nonsense. And it should be pointed to that that's exactly what they're doing. Also, why should you care that Joe Manchin was willing to put somebody in that's a Republican? Why do you care? Why would you even make that point? Why aren't you on here chest stomping that she is going to fail? This is a bizarre thing for Justice Democrats who are nominally considered the left out here doing. I hate seeing shit like this because now I'm stuck with the unenviable disposition of having to bash you for inexcusable behavior and bash your organization for inexcusable behavior while simultaneously not trying to brand you as sellouts as an absolute. Now, this is often like dance between the raindrops, but damn it, I'm going to do it because it's necessary. I don't care. I don't care that Sanders is going to vote for Neera Tanden. What does that have to do with you and your organization of quote unquote Justice Democrats? You're going to be out here begging people on the left for dollars and begging people on the left for support. And yet, when the left was out here happy as a lark that Neera Tanden was potentially going to lose and fail in this particular disposition, you taking the opposite disposition of elements on the left, and instead of chest stomping, instead of saying this is good, they have you on CNN fighting and advocating for Neera Tanden. That video is shameful. That video is shameful. Justice Democrats may not be my enemies, and sellouts is probably a little too strong, but Jesus fucking Christ. I am unsure how the term allies applies. Can allies spend much of their time being ineffectual, politically illiterate, and at times utterly useless and still be called an ally? I think that's an operative question, right? I suppose situational dependent, at least that's the way I look at it, and advocating for Neera Tanden is just credibility destroying. Entirely, completely, and absolutely credibility destroying. And frankly, beyond the wider aspects of the loss of credibility, it is just embarrassing to be out there fighting for Neera Tanden. You may not know this, you may not understand this, but politics and the political dynamics of politics as an absolute rule demand consequences. It's an aspect of it. And honestly, it is the language that Neera Tanden speaks fluently and understands. That a pen needs to be put into that point, regardless of her practiced protestations to the contrary, after the fact if she loses this. At 3 a.m. between her and her God, if this was posed to her, she not only understands this language, but I would go so far as to say respects it. Grudgingly, but yes, respects it. Think back for a moment. Think back when Nina Turner was supposed to speak for Bernie Sanders after they hoisted Bernie Sanders up and threw potatoes and eggs at him and brandished about Democratic National Convention. This is your fallen hero! This is your fallen hero! No! When they embarrassed him in that way, and we wept. They laughed at us. And for one last indignity, what did they do? Nina Turner was supposed to speak, and at the last minute, they put a knife in her, told her she wasn't going to speak. And you had that image of Nina Turner walking out sad, forlorn, having to explain that no, she wasn't going to be allowed to speak because somebody in the Democratic Party just basically thought she was a turncoat and kicked her out at the last minute. This was the Hillary faction exacting consequences for betrayal. This is the Neera Tanden faction exacting consequences. In this case, it fell on a darling of the left, Nina Turner. Think back to Tulsi Gabbard stepping down in order to back Sanders and her receiving that letter where they were going to basically destroy her. And what happened when Tulsi Gabbard ran for president? Think of the unhinged attacks by Democrats and Democratic acolytes. This is the language they get. This is the language they understand. And if you're going to be so weak, you should not be calling yourselves representatives of the left, let alone being on CNN acting as if you are. No, politics demands consequence for horrible behavior towards a faction or a particular tribe, especially in terms of the disrespect that has been given. We can compromise when situations present themselves, but there are red flags and there are deal breakers, and Neera Tanden breaks the deal. Not to mention, and even more importantly, the character and the disgusting political disposition of Neera Tanden. The tweets are bad. Don't misunderstand me. For example, Kennedy, right here, as he's talking about, let's do this for a moment, because he's right.
Answer. I have to tell you, I'm very disturbed about your personal comments about people. It's not just one or two. I think you deleted about 1,000 tweets. And it wasn't just about Republicans. And I don't mind disagreements in policy. I think that's great. I love the dialectic. But the comments were personal. I mean, you call Senator Sanders everything but an ignorant slut.
That is not true.
And
Senator.
when you said these things, did you mean them?
I wouldn't have said ignorant.
Senator, I have to say.
I hope you heard in the back somebody says, well, I wouldn't say ignorant. The slut part, yes. He is right. They called, she deleted like 1,000 tweets. And yeah, a lot of that vitriol was directed towards the left. But it's not just the tweets. The tweets are the tip of the iceberg. It's the overall miserableness of her, what she represents and what she has pushed. Think back to the comments on Libya, where the United States should have been paid for the destruction of Libya. A policy where we backed terrorists going into the country, and then When Gaddafi responded, he said, well, we have to have airstrikes to destroy that country. Obama set that place on fire, leaving the exponential irony of a president, first black president of the United States, taking an action that results in that country selling black slaves. How ironic and ridiculous. And yet, that is the policy that particular president pushed. That is a policy that Neera Tanden apparently approved of and went further, saying that they should have paid for it, supposedly with the oil. This is as vile as Donald Trump saying that the United States should have stolen the oil in Iraq after killing 1,000 Iraqis. I'm sorry, 1 million Iraqis. It's just as vile, and yet Donald Trump will get attacked for that. Neera Tanden gets a pass. She shouldn't get a pass, let alone on the domestic policy front, where she was advocating openly for cuts to Social Security and operating basically a corporate money slush fund. These things are antithetical to the left, and yet there's Justice Democrats fighting for that same Neera Tanden, advocating for that same Neera Tanden, and going after Joe Manchin as quote-unquote divisive for doing so, trying to invoke pandemic as if that's somewhat of a reason or justification for it. Couldn't even come up with a rationale and a decent argument. You had to invoke the thing. And by the way, don't take my word for it. Take Sanders' word for it. Talk about the slush fund.
All right, let me get to another issue that concerns me very much. I happen to believe that big money interests have an undue influence over the economic and political life of our country, that too often campaign contributions are what determines policy rather than the needs of ordinary Americans. And according to the Washington Post, since 2014, the Center for American Progress has received roughly $5.5 million from Walmart, a company that pays its workers starvation wages, $900,000 from the Bank of America, $550,000 from J.P. Morgan Chase, $550,000 from Amazon, $200,000 from Wells Fargo, $800,000 from Facebook, and up to $1.4 million from Google. In other words, CAP has received money for some of the most powerful special interests in our country. How will your relationship with those very powerful special interests impact your decision-making if you are appointed to be the head of OMB?
Senator, I thank you for that question. It will have zero impact on my decision making. I'm actually CAP took a number of positions that
the left doesn't believe that. The left firmly believes that the money that is invested, quote unquote, or given as bribes to these organizations affect the policy and the choices of those organizations. Why wouldn't it? If the organization needs to exist and needs that cash and wants to continue to get that particular cash or the donation, if they advocate for positions that run contrary to their interests, they're not going to get that cash. It is firmly understood and believed by the left. Whether or not other Democrats believe that is secondary and irrelevant to the point that the left does. The idea that Justice Democrats are out there advocating for somebody like that. And by the way, this is a position that the Young Turks, members and people who were at the beginning of the creation of the Justice Democrats, firmly and entirely have advocated for nearly a decade on their network. And we're right. And this is a position that the left takes. If you're getting that cash is affecting behavior. Without hedge or mitigation, Neera Tanden is everything, entirely everything wrong with not just Democratic politics, but politics in general. And no faction has felt that more than the left. She is antithetical to what it means to be on the left from the standpoint of the American politics. And yet, again, representatives, people who consider and call themselves representatives, nominally anyway, of the left, is out there advocating for that person that is antithetical to that same left. How bizarre. It's basically battered wives pleading the case of the husband as the husband stands there out of breath and a beer-stained wife beater still holding the belt. I always say that Democrats, that the left, are the politically abused spouse of the political space. And here we are. The perfect, the epitome of it, on CNN. And by the way, it doesn't matter that Joe Biden may choose somebody who's worse or just as bad as Neera Tanden. That's not the point. So what? Our issue is with her. Our biggest complaint is with her. It doesn't matter if somebody else, if Biden chooses somebody else just as bad or even worse. Our complaint, our problem is specific and dramatically towards her. The point is to make her fail. Her failing is a win. It is a grim win, but it's a win nonetheless. It is one that I would accept, and it is one that I can sit here and laugh about. The left, collectively, if I may be so bold to speak for the left, can sit here and laugh about it. The idea that you are on television, on CNN, as representatives of quote-unquote progressives or representatives of the left is utterly embarrassing. You should be ashamed of yourselves, not just ashamed of yourselves. What the hell is going on at Justice Democrats? Honestly, Joe Manchin is going to put a knife in her nomination. That, and the irony associated with that, is even funnier. I don't even care why he's doing it. I don't care if he feels he needs to represent West Virginia. I don't care if he's trying to get political concessions out of Joe Biden. I don't care. What I care about is her failing. She deserves to fail. I have no idea what the hell is going on at Justice Democrats, but you really need to get your shit straight if you are indeed going to call yourselves allies or in any nominal way representatives of the left. This is credibility ending. This is credibility ending. And you guys need to get the fucking memo. That should never happen. I have no idea what's going on at Justice Democrats headquarters, but you guys need to get your shit together. That is embarrassing. Like, share, and subscribe. And by the way, make sure you guys are subscribed.